What happens when an Oscar-winning international star sits down on one of the most opinionated talk shows on television, and the conversation suddenly turns into a tense, unexpected clash live on air. Before we dive into this moment that had the studio audience gasping and social media lighting up, make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The lights are bright in the studio as the familiar theme music fades out and the hosts of The View settle into their seats around the table. The audience is already buzzing because today's guest isn't just any celebrity. She's an Academy Award winner, an international icon, and someone who rarely appears on daytime television. The camera pans toward the entrance as the moderator smiles. "Well, we have a very special guest with us today," she says. She's starred in films all over the world. She won an Oscar for her incredible performance in Vicky Cristina Barcelona, and she's here to talk about her latest project. Please welcome the amazing Penélope Cruz. The audience erupts into applause as Penélope walks onto the stage with a warm smile, waving to the crowd. She hugs each of the hosts before taking her seat at the table. The energy is upbeat, relaxed, the kind of welcoming moment daytime talk shows love. "Thank you so much," Penélope says, looking around the table. "It's so nice to be here. You look incredible," one host says immediately, leaning forward. "Every time we see you, you somehow look younger." The audience laughs. "Oh, please," Penélope replies, smiling. "You are very kind." The conversation starts light, exactly how these interviews usually begin. They talk about her new film, filming schedules, and how she balances work with family. "Your career has been amazing to watch," another host says. "You've worked with some of the biggest directors in the world." Penélope nods. "Yes, I have been very lucky. When I started acting in Spain, I never imagined this journey." The audience applauds again. Across the table sits Sunny Hostin, listening carefully, occasionally nodding. Sunny smiles politely, but viewers familiar with the show know she often steers conversations into deeper territory. And it doesn't take long before she jumps in. "So Penélope," Sunny says, leaning slightly forward, "you've talked before about being very selective about the roles you take now." "Yes," Penélope replies. "Very selective." Sunny continues, "Because representation matters. And Hollywood has been criticized for years about the way women, especially women from different cultures, are portrayed." The audience murmurs softly. Penélope nods slowly. "That's true," she says. Sunny presses further. "So when you look back at some of the roles you've played, do you ever feel like some of them reinforce stereotypes?" There's a subtle shift in the room. One of the other hosts glances sideways at Sunny, sensing the direction this could go. Penélope pauses for a moment before answering. "I think every actor has roles they look back on differently with time," she says carefully. "But I always tried to choose characters with depth." Sunny nods, but she isn't backing off. "Sure," she says. "But there's been criticism, and I'm sure you've heard it, about Hollywood sometimes casting Latina actresses in very specific kinds of roles." The audience grows quieter. Penélope keeps her composure. "Yes, I have heard that conversation," she replies calmly. Sunny continues. "And some critics have said that by accepting those roles, actors sometimes contribute to that system." A couple of hosts shift in their chairs. The tension is subtle, but it's there. Penélope tilts her head slightly. "Well," she says slowly, "that is a complicated conversation." Sunny responds quickly. "But do you see their point?" There's a beat of silence. Penélope smiles politely, but her expression has changed. "I see many points," she says. "But I also know the reality of being an actor trying to build a career." The audience gives a small round of applause. Another host jumps in, trying to keep things balanced. "Exactly," she says. "Actors don't always control the system they're in." Sunny nods but continues. "Right, but at some point influential actors do have power." The atmosphere is shifting from friendly interview to something more serious. Penélope sits up straighter. "I agree with that," she says. "But I also believe you cannot judge someone's entire career by looking at it from one angle." The audience reacts with a few sounds. Sunny raises her eyebrows slightly. "Well, that's fair," she says. "But audiences today are asking tougher questions about representation." Penélope nods again. "And that is a good thing. The exchange is still polite, but viewers can feel the undercurrent building." One host laughs nervously. "Well, this got deep fast." The audience laughs too, easing the tension slightly. But Sunny continues. "I'm just curious," she says, "because you're someone young actresses look up to." Penélope smiles again. And I hope what they see is someone who worked very hard. Sunny replies, absolutely. But do you ever feel responsibility for how those roles shape perception? Another small pause. Penelope takes a breath. I feel responsibility to tell human stories, she says. Sunny tilts her head. But sometimes those stories come from systems that have historically limited certain groups. A few audience members clap quietly. Penelope nods, but her voice becomes firmer. Yes, she says. And that is why it is important to create more opportunities, not blame individual actors. The audience applauds louder this time. One host quickly jumps in. Let's talk about your new film, she says with a smile, clearly trying to redirect. But Sunny isn't finished. Just one more thing, she says. Penelope looks toward her. Sunny continues. Because you've also spoken about wanting more complex roles for women in general. Yes, Penelope replies. So when you see Hollywood still making the same mistakes, do you call it out? The audience leans in. Penelope's smile fades slightly. I speak about what I believe, she says. Sunny responds quickly. But do you challenge the system publicly? Another quiet moment. Penelope finally replies. I believe change happens in many ways. The air feels noticeably heavier now. One of the other hosts laughs softly. Okay, I feel like we're getting into a debate here. The audience laughs again. Penelope smiles politely. Sunny smiles too. But viewers can tell the conversation isn't finished yet. Because what starts as a thoughtful discussion is about to turn into something far more intense. And the moment that follows will leave the entire studio stunned. There's a brief moment where the studio seems to exhale after the laughter. One of the hosts reaches for her mug, another shuffles her notes, and the audience settles back into their seats. But the atmosphere has clearly shifted. What began as a friendly celebrity interview has turned into something deeper. And everyone at the table seems to feel it. Across the table, Penelope Cruz sits composed, her hands folded lightly in front of her. She's still smiling politely, but her expression is more focused now. So let's talk about the new film, one of the hosts says, eager to lighten things up. Because people are very excited about this project. Penelope nods. Yes, it's a story about family and identity, she says. It's very emotional. The audience listens closely as she continues. My character is someone who has to confront her past and understand where she comes from. That sounds intense, another host says. Yes, Penelope replies with a small laugh. There were many days of crying. The audience laughs with her. But before the conversation can fully move on, Sunny Hostin leans forward again slightly. And that's interesting, Sunny says. Because identity is such a huge part of the conversation we were just having. A couple of the hosts glance toward her. Penelope nods cautiously. Yes. Sunny continues, her tone calm but direct. You've talked before about being proud of your Spanish roots. Yes, of course, Penelope says. And bringing that identity into Hollywood. Yes. Sunny tilts her head thoughtfully. But some critics say Hollywood often celebrates international actors while still failing to create space for diverse American voices. The audience murmurs again. Penelope listens quietly. Sunny continues. So I'm curious how you see that balance. One of the hosts quietly says, Okay. Penelope takes a moment before answering. Well, I think diversity should include everyone, she says. Sunny nods. Of course. But, Penelope continues, I don't think it helps anyone when we create divisions about who deserves opportunity. There's a small ripple of applause in the audience. Sunny keeps eye contact. I agree with that, she says. But the conversation about access is still very real. Penelope nods again. Yes. Sunny leans forward just slightly more. And some people feel that international stars sometimes get celebrated for diversity, while American minority actors struggle to get the same visibility. A few audience members clap. The tension at the table becomes noticeable again. One host raises her eyebrows slightly, watching the exchange closely. Penelope remains calm. I think the industry has many problems, she says. Sunny quickly replies. So should actors with influence speak more loudly about those problems? Penelope's smile returns, but it's tighter. I believe many actors already do. Sunny nods. But some do more than others. The audience reacts with a mixture of murmurs and quiet claps. Another host tries to jump in. You've also produced films, right? She asks Penelope. Yes, Penelope replies, turning slightly toward her. And that must give you more control over storytelling. Exactly, Penelope says. Sunny gently cuts back in. And that's where influence really comes in. The host who tried to redirect gives a small, polite smile but leans back again. Sunny continues. When you produce films, do you actively think about representation behind the camera too? Yes, Penelope answers immediately. Because Hollywood has also been criticized for who gets those opportunities. Penelope nods. That's true. Sunny keeps her tone steady. So do you prioritize hiring diverse crews? Penelope pauses slightly. I prioritize hiring the best people for the job. There's a split reaction from the audience, some clapping, some quiet. Sunny tilts her head. Some would argue that the best person for the job argument has historically been used to avoid addressing systemic inequality. A few louder claps come from the audience now. One of the other hosts quickly says, half joking, "All right, this is getting serious today." The audience laughs nervously. Penelope smiles politely again, but now her voice is a bit firmer. I think we should be careful not to assume bad intentions where there are none. Sunny nods. I'm not assuming intentions, she replies. I'm asking about impact. The audience reacts with a soft, "Oh." One host quietly says, "Okay." Penelope shifts slightly in her seat. I think impact is important, she says. Sunny responds quickly. So if someone pointed out that certain casting choices reinforce stereotypes, would you reconsider those decisions? The question hangs in the air. Penelope takes a breath. I always listen when people raise concerns, she says. But, Sunny asks gently. But, Penelope continues, I also believe context matters. The audience applauds lightly. Sunny nods again, but she isn't letting the topic drop. Context does matter, she says. But accountability does too. Another ripple of reactions from the audience. One of the hosts interjects again. Let's also remember actors don't control everything. Sunny turns slightly toward her. Of course not, she says. But influential actors do have platforms. Penelope nods. Yes, they do. Sunny gestures toward her. And you're one of them. The room grows quiet again. Penelope smiles slightly. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had. Sunny presses gently. But with that opportunity comes responsibility. Another small wave of claps. Penelope's tone becomes more direct now. I agree with responsibility, she says. But I don't believe in simplifying very complex issues. Sunny leans back slightly in her chair. And I don't think asking questions is simplifying them. The audience reacts again. One host raises both hands slightly. All right. The audience laughs again. But the tension is now unmistakable. Penelope looks toward Sunny and says calmly, I'm happy to discuss these topics. But I also think sometimes people expect actors to solve problems that are much bigger than any one person. Sunny nods slowly. That's fair. But then she adds, yet many actors choose to speak out on political issues. A few audience members clap loudly. Penelope raises an eyebrow slightly. Yes, she says. Sunny continues. And when they do, audiences listen. Penelope replies, yes, and that can be a powerful thing. Sunny pauses for a second, which is why some people wonder why certain voices speak up on some issues but stay quiet on others. The audience reacts loudly now, a mixture of clapping and murmuring. One host whispers under her breath, oh boy. Penelope's smile fades just slightly. I don't believe that is a fair characterization, she says. Sunny keeps her tone calm. Some would disagree. The air in the studio feels heavier now. Another host jumps in quickly. Okay, before we turn this into a full political debate. But Sunny adds one more question. I'm just curious, she says. Penelope looks directly at her. Sunny continues. When people criticize your choices publicly, how do you respond? Penelope sits up straighter. I listen, she says. And, Sunny asks. And sometimes I disagree. The audience applauds loudly. Sunny smiles slightly. Well, that's fair. But the exchange between them has clearly changed the tone of the entire interview. The friendly conversation has turned into something far more intense. And what happens next at the table will push that tension even further, leaving the hosts scrambling to keep the conversation from completely boiling over. The applause fades, but the energy in the studio doesn't return to the easy, relaxed feeling it had earlier. Everyone at the table seems aware that the conversation has crossed into uncomfortable territory. The audience can sense it too. Some people are leaning forward in their seats, others exchanging glances, clearly curious about where this is going. Penelope Cruz sits calmly, but there's a noticeable change in her posture now. She's more upright, more alert. Her polite smile has softened into a more serious expression. Across the table, Sunny Hostin glances down briefly at her notes, then looks back up. One of the other hosts tries once again to shift the tone. I think this actually connects to something interesting, she says with a light laugh. Actors often get pulled into these bigger cultural conversations, whether they want to or not. The audience chuckles softly. Penelope nods. That's very true. Another host jumps in. And sometimes people forget that actors are human beings, not political spokespersons. The audience applauds. Penelope smiles appreciatively. Yes, exactly, she says. Sunny nods slowly. I understand that point, she says. But at the same time, when someone has a global platform, people do expect them to engage with these conversations. Penelope responds calmly. And I do engage. Sunny tilts her head. But sometimes selectively. The audience reacts again with a soft wave of murmurs. Penelope looks directly at Sunny. What do you mean by selectively? She asks. The tone of the conversation becomes noticeably sharper. Sunny keeps her voice measured. Well, for example, there are certain issues in the industry that some actors are very vocal about. Penelope nods. Yes, and others that they avoid. Penelope's expression tightens slightly. I think everyone chooses the causes that matter most to them. Sunny responds immediately. But some people would say that certain topics are easier to talk about than others. The audience lets out another collective, oh. One host raises her eyebrows and quietly says, okay. Penelope pauses for a moment before answering. I think we have to be careful about judging people's motivations, she says. Sunny replies calmly. I'm not judging motivations. I'm asking about consistency. The audience claps lightly again. Another host leans forward, trying to smooth things over. Listen, I think this is actually an interesting conversation, she says. But we also don't want to put our guest on trial here. The audience laughs nervously. Sunny smiles slightly. That's not what I'm doing, she says. Penelope nods slowly. I know, she says. But then she adds something that shifts the energy again. However, sometimes it can feel like actors are expected to defend every decision they've ever made. The audience claps. Sunny responds, well, when you're a public figure. Penelope gently interrupts. Yes, I understand that. There's a small pause. Sunny leans forward slightly. But the public also has a right to ask questions. Penelope nods. Yes. Sunny continues. And when those questions come from communities that feel underrepresented, they deserve answers. Several audience members clap louder now. Penelope takes a breath before replying. I respect those voices very much, she says. Sunny nods. But, Penelope smiles faintly. But I also think sometimes conversations become very simplified. Sunny raises an eyebrow. How so? Penelope gestures lightly with her hands. For example, assuming that one actor's career choices define an entire system. The audience reacts with scattered applause. Sunny responds quickly. No one is saying one actor defines the system. Penelope nods. But sometimes it feels like individuals are asked to carry responsibility for problems that belong to the industry. Sunny leans back slightly in her chair. Well, the industry is made up of individuals. The audience reacts again. Another host quietly says, all right. Penelope keeps her voice steady. Yes, but the system is much bigger than one person. Sunny replies, of course. Then she adds, but some people would say that actors who benefit from the system should also challenge it more directly. The room grows quiet again. Penelope looks directly at Sunny. I have challenged it, she says. Sunny asks calmly, how? There's a noticeable pause. The audience waits. Penelope answers carefully. By choosing certain roles, by producing films, by supporting new voices. Sunny nods slowly. But some activists say that change also requires public advocacy. Penelope replies, I support many causes privately. Sunny responds, but private support doesn't always create public change. The audience reacts with louder murmurs. One host jumps in again. Okay, let's remember this is a morning show, she says jokingly. The audience laughs. But the tension between Sunny and Penelope hasn't disappeared. Penelope looks back at Sunny. I think we agree on more than we disagree, she says. Sunny nods. Probably. But then she adds one more comment that shifts the energy again. My only point is that influence comes with expectations. Penelope responds calmly. Yes. Sunny continues. And sometimes audiences want to see their favorite stars take stronger positions. Penelope smiles slightly. And sometimes they do. Sunny says. And sometimes they don't. The audience reacts again. Penelope pauses before responding. I believe everyone has their own way of contributing. Sunny replies, but some ways are more visible than others. The tension is now unmistakable. One host quietly whispers, this is getting spicy. The audience laughs again. Penelope turns slightly toward the other hosts and says with a small smile, I thought we were here to talk about movies. The audience bursts into laughter and applause. Even Sunny laughs briefly. Fair enough, Sunny says. But then she adds, I just think these conversations matter. Penelope nods. They do. There's a moment where it seems like the tension might finally ease. One of the hosts claps her hands lightly. All right, let's lighten things up for a second, she says. The audience cheers. She turns to Penelope. We heard you're actually very funny on set. Penelope laughs. I try. Is it true you prank your co-stars? Oh yes, Penelope admits. The audience laughs. For a moment, the mood feels lighter again. But then Sunny adds one last comment, almost casually. Well, if you ever prank us here, just make sure it's not political. The audience laughs loudly. Penelope laughs too. But then she replies with a line that instantly changes the mood again. I would never prank someone by questioning their integrity on live television. The studio goes completely quiet. A few audience members gasp softly. One host's eyes widen. Sunny looks momentarily surprised. Then she responds quickly. I wasn't questioning your integrity. Penelope keeps her tone calm but firm. It felt that way. The audience reacts loudly, a mix of gasps, murmurs, and applause. One host raises both hands. Okay, all right, we're going to take a quick break. The audience applauds loudly as the cameras begin to pull back. But the look between Sunny and Penelope as the show cuts to commercial leaves the entire studio wondering what will happen when the cameras come back. Because the conversation has officially crossed from debate into a real on-air clash. The audience applause continues as the show cuts to commercial. But the mood in the studio is completely different from when the interview began. The tension that built during the conversation hasn't disappeared. If anything, it's hanging in the air. When the cameras stop rolling, some audience members can still be heard whispering to each other. Did she really just say that? I can't believe that happened. At the table, the hosts take a quick breath while producers move around off camera. The moment between Penelope Cruz and Sunny Hostin clearly caught everyone off guard. One of the other hosts leans slightly toward Penelope and says quietly, Are you okay? Penelope nods calmly. Yes, of course. Sunny looks down at her notes for a moment, then glances toward the producers standing just beyond the cameras. Another host tries to ease the atmosphere with a light comment. Well, that was lively. A few audience members laugh softly. The floor manager signals that the show will return from commercial in just a few seconds. Everyone quickly adjusts in their seats. Penelope sits back, composed but serious. Sunny straightens her papers. Then the familiar cue from the control room comes through. And we're back in 5 for 3. The cameras go live again on The View. The moderator smiles toward the audience. Welcome back, she says, keeping her tone upbeat. We're here with Academy Award, winning actress Penelope Cruz. The audience applauds again. Penelope smiles politely and waves. The host continues. We've been having quite a conversation today. That line gets a mix of laughter and applause from the crowd. Sunny nods slightly, smiling as well. The moderator continues. And that's what this table is about, real conversations. The audience claps. She turns toward Penelope. We appreciate you being willing to engage with us. Penelope nods graciously. Thank you for having me. For a moment, it seems like the show will move on and leave the tension behind. Another host jumps in with a lighter question. So tell us something fun from the set of the new movie, she says. We need a behind-the-scenes story. The audience laughs. Penelope relaxes slightly. Well, there was one day where everything went wrong, she begins. She tells a short story about filming a difficult emotional scene while the crew struggled with lighting problems and props that kept breaking. The audience laughs as she describes it. One host jokes, That sounds like our show sometimes. The crowd laughs louder. For a few minutes, the mood finally feels lighter again. But viewers watching closely can still see the subtle tension at the table. Sunny listens quietly, nodding politely. Eventually, the moderator turns back to her. Sunny, you had one more question earlier. The audience immediately reacts with a few surprised murmurs. Sunny smiles slightly. Well, I just wanted to clarify something, she says calmly. The room becomes quiet again. Penelope looks toward her. Sunny continues. I never intended to question your integrity. The audience listens closely. My goal was to talk about broader industry issues. Penelope nods slowly. I understand that, she says. Sunny adds, and I respect the work you've done. Penelope smiles politely. Thank you. Then she responds in a calm, measured voice. And I respect the conversation. The audience applauds. One host claps lightly and says, see? This is what respectful disagreement looks like. The crowd cheers. The moderator nods. That's right. She turns to the audience. You know, sometimes these conversations get passionate. Several people laugh. But they're important. Penelope nods in agreement. Yes, they are. Sunny also nods. I agree. The show moves into its final minutes. Another host asks Penelope about upcoming projects, and the conversation stays much lighter for the remainder of the segment. Still, the earlier moment clearly left an impression. As the interview wraps up, the moderator turns toward the audience. Let's hear it again for Penelope Cruz. The studio erupts with applause. Penelope stands and hugs the hosts one by one. When she reaches Sunny, they share a brief but polite hug. The audience notices it immediately and applauds louder. As Penelope waves goodbye and walks off stage, the hosts transition into the next segment of the show. But the moment that happened earlier is already spreading far beyond the studio. Within minutes, clips from the exchange begin circulating online. On platforms like X, Instagram, and TikTok, viewers are replaying the exact moment when Penelope said, I would never prank someone by questioning their integrity on live television. Some viewers praise Penelope for standing her ground. Others defend Sunny, saying she was simply asking tough questions, something she's known for doing on The View. Comment sections quickly fill with debates. Penelope handled that perfectly. Sunny was just doing her job. That got awkward fast. I love when real conversations happen on live TV. Entertainment blogs begin posting headlines about the exchange within hours. Clips of the moment rack up hundreds of thousands of views. Later that afternoon, several media outlets report that the conversation continued briefly backstage. According to sources in the studio, both Penelope and Sunny spoke privately for a few minutes after the show ended. Producers say the discussion was calm and respectful. Neither of them appeared upset when leaving the studio. In fact, one staff member reportedly said the two women were completely professional after the cameras stopped rolling. But the debate among viewers continues. Some people say the exchange showed exactly why talk shows like The View remain so compelling, because real conversations can lead to real tension. Others argue that celebrity interviews should focus more on entertainment and less on controversy. By the end of the day, the clip becomes one of the most talked about talk show moments online. And for viewers, it's another reminder that live television can still deliver completely unpredictable moments. Now we want to hear from you. What did you think about this intense exchange between Penelope Cruz and Sunny Hostin? Did Penelope handle the situation well? Or was Sunny right to push the conversation further? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories and unforgettable TV moments.